Imagine having access to a tribe of mentors, experts in the biggest questions in tech. This is Making Revenue Tick. Hello and welcome to Making Revenue Tick. Today we're talking about dominating events. I'm Richard Washington. This is Itai Manor. Itai, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. An incredible recommendation from one of our podcast alumni. So I was wonderful when we got connected, and we had a great conversation about a number of topics. But there's something that you do. There's actually a number of things that you do which are quite impressive, and maybe we'll get into that slightly. But around events as a strategy to drive revenue, and we talked about this word of dominating events. Why is that topic of dominating events one that's close to your heart?
So I've always been motivated by a combination of people, networking, and face-to-face events, while also making business and conversations, right? So I think eventually, end of the day, even now with transformation of AI, with outbound prospecting and automations and all of that, there's nothing like meeting someone face to face, looking to them in the eye, talking about like the personal stuff, mixing it with the professional things. And I think eventually face-to-face events, conferences, these are the places where you can make your best ever connections and close business while doing so.
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? Because you could literally meet someone at an event 5 years before, and then just because you met for like 20 minutes one random day, you feel a different level of connection and trust with that person than you would with someone that you'd only ever met through video or through email or as part of some sort of sales process. What do you boil that down to? That meeting someone in person has such a seismic difference than meeting them just virtually.
So I agree 100%. However, I do want to add something small. So I think the best connection derives from connecting first on a personal level, only then bringing the professional aspect, right? So and it also partially answers your question, right? So I believe that obviously, like meeting someone face to face, you get the entire view of the person. Seeing like that, viewing like someone on Zoom, you only get like a small portion of it, right? Like you don't see, for instance, body language. You get tonality, but you don't see it as if you're meeting face to face. It's much harder to kind of like read the room and understand the person just from looking on Zoom. And you don't also have kind of like the corridor talk, like the casual talk, kind of like in between the meeting or before or after or in the lunch break or whatever or something like that. Because when you get into a room virtually, you need to make it super focused, super professional, speak about the subject in which you wanted to speak about for 30 minutes, and you don't get all of the things that are right next to it, right? So to your question, I think it has like a different way of connecting. You meet someone in person, you speak about the personal stuff. We'll talk about it later on, about the
Yeah.
icebreakers and all of that, but like you
Yeah.
speak about the personal stuff, you catch them maybe in like a small conversation before jumping into the professional. And yes, of course, you can do something memorable, right? That will also make them remember you.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great point. It's true, isn't it? When you start a call, it's often scheduled amount of time, clear start and clear finish. We want to maybe send an agenda ahead of time. We've got points we want to cover. We get straight into the meat and potatoes of the conversation, and there isn't that kind of, like you say, rapport building, trust building happening, which makes a lot of sense. And that's what was great about working face to face in an office 5 days a week, is that we did go and have a cigarette break or a coffee break or a drink after work, or just like you say, in between meetings, and you would build that trust and familiarity with people. Maybe 5 days a week isn't the answer. Maybe it is for some businesses, but certainly creating face-to-face moments, I think, is critical. How did you get into all this then? I know that we're going to talk about your playbook, how you approach this, but tell me about how you got into this and being an expert in this topic.
So first thing, I think the person needs to find what they love best, combined with what they're good at, right? It's a mix of passion and what you're capable of doing the best. So for me, it's kind of like a combination between like people skills, networking skills, and sales skills, but also networking at live events, getting to know people, starting conversations, stuff like that. So I've always been this type of outgoing person that just find it's kind of like easy to connect and mingle at face-to-face events. And it actually been a major aspect of multiple aspects of my life, not just work, not just the professional, right? So I was a bar owner for 7 years in Tel Aviv. That included obviously a lot of face-to-face meetings with people. Um, I actually, in my studies in the university, I've actually sort of like co-founded a student line because I saw that student nightlife in Tel Aviv University wasn't good enough. So like I've always in my life I've always been kind of motivated by doing the physical, the face-to-face events stop type of motion, not only in work but also in my personal life. And obviously when I started doing sales a few years back, I also realized that I'm very like I'm good when it comes to face-to-face interactions, and I found it to be very, very, interesting, motivational, and also being a super competitive person. I also managed to always find the competitive angle of getting more interaction than my peer, or coming up with like an interesting way to approach in the next time, right? So I've always kind of like made it a game. I gamified it a bit to not only compete with my peers, obviously, but also compete with my earlier approach, right? So to your question, it's a mix, right? It's a mix between of like who I am. I'm genuinely am like a curious person. I love creating in like face-to-face interactions in events all across different areas of my life, like not just the professional side. But I'm also a very outgoing, competitive person, and I've managed to kind of like gamify my way into leveraging that as well.
Hmm, hmm. It's really interesting. I came from a nightclub background, and a lot of the best salespeople I know came from hospitality because there's so much of the learning to deal with so many people in such a short amount of time and create an experience for people that translates into communication, sales, and leadership. I think it's one of those things people always talk about hiring sports. I'm like, hire hospitality. It just makes sense. But also, I think what you've shown is leadership. So for an example like university, people are always up for going to those sorts of things, but very few people instigate it, and certainly not putting structure around it. But people love that, and it can become like the thing that people go and do. But it comes with one person's big idea. What was that? What was the first big event you ever put on that's most memorable to you?
Um, it's a good question. So professional or personal or whatever.
Whichever one stands out.
I would mention two events, right? That like one personal, one professional. So it was a few years back, I think 2017 or 2018. I was still a student, and I was mostly doing like lines, right? So I took one night and this nightclub like weekly or monthly, and I had like a bunch of students that were a friend of mine that I just brought to the clubs, and then I get paid like per head, stuff like that. And then after a while, when I was promoting, when I was a promoter, so me and a few friends of mine decided to take it to the next level and do a huge rooftop party, like huge relatively, right? Huge to the things that we've done until this point. So we actually organized the team. We had marketing, we had logistics, all of that. There were five of us. And for the first time in our young nightlife approach, we did a rooftop party of like 400, 500 people. And we did everything. We bought the fridge. We orchestrated the shade, right? Because it was very sunny. We also bought the bar. We chose the bartenders. We did everything. We did the logistics, and not only were promoters of the event. And then for the first time, I actually felt what it's like to host a party, to build something from scratch. And this was some sort of like an entrepreneurship experience for me as someone who later on became a bar owner, like a bar founder, right? So that's one. We also, by the way, formed this party because people saw that we can operate. We got a lot of different, like me and my partner at nightlife back at the time. So there were two of us. We were doing the student stuff together. So we got a lot of offers to then become co-owners at several bars in the city. So this was one of the parties that I organized that actually took us to the next level in terms of our brand and all that. So this is one. And two, so like I organized a bunch of sales events for my community, but I think one of the most interesting events that I organized was actually before I opened up my community. By the way, I run a community for revenue professionals. It's the biggest one in Israel. It's called RevHub, more than 2,000 members. So before building RevHub, before doing it, I actually organized with a friend of mine. We organized an event for salespeople and sales leaders. Most of them were friends of ours, like 50 or 60 people. And then we called this event How I Lost It. And the idea was that we brought 4 speakers, different seniority levels, and they each spoke about the biggest loss of their career.
Wow.
So the $1.5 million deal that they lost, the job offer that they really wanted and never got, like stuff like that. And I think there was something very authentic about this night. Since then, I've organized like more structured events, sponsored events, like stuff like that. But I think this one was one of the most interesting events that I've done, and one of the most authentic ones because people spoke about failures. And the crowd was very engaged, asked questions, and this was really fun. It was like one of the first things that I've actually organized in sales world.
Yeah, that's genius. It makes me think about Jim Rohn, and he always said that people who had kind of like lost it all and had massive failures should be the ones that are going on stage and talking to large crowds of people because it's always success stories. It's always like best practices and blueprints, and people are like, well, like, it's complicated. And I think that humanization to vulnerably share the things that went wrong and what you learned from it is probably way more valuable and engaging and human than it is for someone to stand up and talk about the incredible success that they've had. And pretty much LinkedIn feels like that, right? If we think about LinkedIn as a platform, it's totally like, look at my amazing life. And the stuff that isn't like that stands out like a beacon because it's true and authentic. And I love that approach. Where did you get the idea from to think about that so differently than most people do?
Um, so I just thought that we should do an event, and then I just thought that like everyone is doing the same things more or less. Like sales leader talks about go to market and stuff like that. It's also great, right? But we try to do something differently a bit more friendly, a bit more casual, get people to open up. And yeah, this was like an idea we had. And then later on, actually, I also learned that there is an organization in Israel that's called Fuck Up Nights. You heard about it? So what they do is they basically do events around telling failure stories. So this is a very cool idea.
What's your
You know,
favorite failure story around this topic of events?
an event that I organized.
Yeah, what's your biggest fuck up?
So we actually had like a very nice, relatively successful bar, like neighborhood bar in Israel, where the bar, like in Tel Aviv, where the bartender knows your name. Like 30-40% were regulars, and we're doing very well until unfortunately they started renovating the building, and then they gave us like 3 month notice, and we needed to leave the building, and then we found this new location for the bar, and looking back, choosing this spot, this location was a horrible decision to take my to, right? Because like one, it was at a completely different neighborhood. We lost touch with the regulars. Two, every bar that ever tried to make it at this specific point in the city failed miserably, and people told us about it. They gave us some warnings. Yeah, and three, we just like took the same name. It was called Stacks, my bar. We tried to kind of like make it Stacks again, but it just like wasn't the place, wasn't the neighborhood, wasn't the area. So like my original bar lasted like 6 years, and then after we opened the new one, we closed in 8 months. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, so this is actually one of the biggest failures that I have in nightlife. Yeah.
What I would have taught you loads of things, but what's one great lesson that you've taken from those failures that you always remember?
So I will take something from the bar story. So I think like maybe two or three main lessons. So one, like always listen to your gut, because um, I actually opened my bar with my friend from school, who was also my partner in nightlife, in promoting and all of that. And both of us felt that we shouldn't take this place to another location. We should just close. But eventually, another partner of us, um, I wouldn't say convinced that, because it was also our decision, but it kind of like pushed us to do it quickly and opened up a bar in another location. So lesson number one is kind of like listen to your gut. And then lesson number two is quite straightforward, I would say. It's like do your research, right? Because like so many people fail there, so many bar owners fail there, and we actually got some warnings not to open up there. So it's like listen to other people that have more experience than you in specific location, in specific areas of life. That's like the second lesson, I would say.
I
Um,
like it. I
yeah.
feel just from like asking you these questions, I know more about you, and I think it's the power of sharing these sorts of stories, which is great. Let's bring it onto this topic of dominating events. So what I'm curious to understand is if you think about the type of people that you help to bring in an event strategy that means that they can dominate in the marketplace, what's the question or the set of questions that are in their mind, the things that they're struggling with that you help them to answer through your event strategy?
So the question that they start with, we're talking about everything that's around eventually creating revenue and scalable revenue from events and conferences, right? So what are the questions? One is like, which conferences and events should I attend? Where can I meet a couple of hundreds, a couple of thousands, maybe even more than that, of ICP profiles in the same location? Where are these events? How should I attend them? What does it mean? It means that like I'm a young startup. Should I now invest or waste 50, $100,000 on a booth, on swag, on a party, whatever? Or should I just go hunt, cover the floor, take two salespeople, the founder? Three is like, who should I meet at this event, right? Four is, how should I approach and how should I try to set meetings with them, right? Five is, what tools should I use and what type of messaging and hooks should I use for the event? And then comes later, what should I do on the day of the event? Where should I go? Which sessions should I attend? How should I hunt on the floor? What should I do to create impact and be unique? And then later comes, how do I make sure that I leverage and capitalize on the people that I have met? Because they're all getting bombarded with thousands of follow-up emails, right? So eventually people forget that the goal of going and attending events is not to socialize, like it's also to socialize and learn, but like basically, especially for young companies, but for everyone, it's not even getting meetings or scanning badges, it's getting revenue, closing deals, right? Like that's the final goal. That's the main goal of creating of attending events. Yeah.
I like it. It'd be great to hear your experience of where people go wrong. I'll share my perspective as someone who works in businesses who spent a lot of money on events and seeing a lot of my clients spending money on events and then realizing it hasn't worked at all, and then trying to hire someone to come in who knows what they're actually doing and do it better. We often hear about clients spending $250,000 on events and not even measuring MQLs and their conversion, basic stuff. So my experience is a company goes, we need to go and get this credibility. We'll get this strategic partnership. We'll go to this big event. We're going to, like you say, spend 50, 100 grand. Who's going to project manage that? We put like an executive who's going to own that project, but they're too busy day to day. They've got loads of other things. So what they do is then delegate it to a junior marketing person or a junior operations person who's never done it before. And they pretty much give them all the ownership around organizing the event, project managing the event, executing the event. And then ultimately, once that's all that money's been spent and they've managed to achieve the event happening and being executed, then they switch into right now we need to go and squeeze all the revenue out of this. But because all the mistakes were made up front, they never actually go and get the result off the back of it. And it comes back to that individual getting a lot of blame and a lot of learning. But fundamentally, they should never have been running that event. That's my experience. I don't know how typical that is of what you've seen with the clients that you work with.
Yeah, I would say it's very typical, right? So you're talking about big budgets and like big ticket events that companies are attending, and I agree completely, right? So a lot of the time it falls under the responsibility of one marketing, one field events person, stuff like that, something like that. They would spend 50K, 100K, something like that, and then a company wouldn't be able to understand if the conference was successful or not, right? Because so like yes, maybe they even measured scanned badges, but they have no idea and no way to kind of like match closed business from the event. And like we said, right? So eventually the idea is closing deals, closing business. So I think it's a very typical story. Companies go to the one big event they know that the entire industry is going for. They will, if they're lucky, just waste money on flight tickets and conference tickets, and if not, they would spend money on a big booth, and then they would just hope to get people that will visit their booth. They will scan their badge, they will send them an automated email, and they will disappear. So very typical story.
Where else do they go wrong? So, what are you seeing in terms of the common things that people get wrong around the way that they think about executing events?
So first, it's about choosing the right event. So just because everyone's going to RSA, let's say, obviously it's one of the biggest one in cyber, right? So or everyone's going to NRF if you are in retail, or everyone's going to whatever, doesn't necessarily mean that you should go there as well. Like, yes, it could be nice for you to go there, expose your brand a bit, but it's about event selection it's about choosing the events that are right for you. And we are talking about choosing an event where you have ICP density, where you can where you know for sure for a fact that you are going to meet target target market ICP. So it's choosing the right events, and you can choose, for instance, a niche event, right? That's in your specific niche, where decision makers are attending. And then instead of going to the biggest event where 100,000 people are going to come, you can go and place a booth for 30% the cost, 10% of the people, however, they're all relevant for your business, right? So it's event selection. That's number one, right? It's choosing the right event for you. This is where a lot of people go wrong.
What's number two?
So two is knowing, like I said before, how to attend the event. It's kind of like partial number one. So you choose the event, and then you need to ask yourself, what do I want to get, and how much do I want to spend in this event? So let's take the biggest ones, for example, right? Like reInvent. You want to do something in reInvent, you're gonna spend at least, like a couple of thousands of grand, like 50K USD, maybe even more than that. But like if you're gonna do, let's say, like a dinner or like close a restaurant, again, we're talking about 50K, maybe even more. And then you need to ask yourself, is this the right move? Maybe reInvent because it's so big, you just want to walk the floor and then build trust with some familiar faces, and then choose like a tiny event in which you want to take a booth for 5K or 7K or 10, right, or 10K, something like that. So it's choosing which events to go to, but also how to attend these events. And then I think another big mistake, maybe one of the biggest ones, is kind of like orchestrating the event selection. So that you're choosing the event, you're choosing how to attend, you place a booth, something like that, but you don't work on scheduling meetings, right? So every company that chooses an event and is going to attend needs to dedicate at least a month in advance to prepare for the event, find relevant companies, find decision makers that are attending, or any sort of like personas from your buying committee that are attending. And then you should focus hard on creating the right hook and schedule meeting with them in advance, right? So that's maybe another big mistake that companies are doing.
I'd love to hear an example there. Do you have a good example of where you've seen a company do that very well? Maybe it's your own company, maybe it's someone that you've helped, where they've executed that pre-planning, making sure that they're getting noticed and getting scheduled ahead of time.
Um, yeah, sure. So I will actually tell a story about a company that did something very unique, not about my own services. So I will not mention the company name, but so what they did, they actually went to one of the most interesting, most relevant conferences in their industry, right? And then they try to think. Everyone is trying to target the same people over the same in the same methodology, right? Like send maybe LinkedIn, email, stuff like that. We are talking about like very, very, very high caliber execs, busy people getting approached all the time. And then they try to kind of think and understand, where can I approach and where can I meet these people? Um, and where can I meet them in the place where they need where they have some pain and they are bored, or maybe they want to speak, or maybe they'll be open to approach. So what they did, they thought about this question: where do all these people are going to be before the conference, in the conference, or after the conference, and they will have some time to kill. So the answer eventually was very simple: from getting to the airport to getting to the hotels to checking in. They have a couple of hours to kill. They are bored, maybe from the flight or whatever, and they would be open to conversations. So what they did is actually through their partners and partners, they just asked them to send out a questionnaire, a survey to their ICP, to their clients, to the partners' clients, which are their potential clients. And they did a questionnaire about picking them up, about how they are getting and when they are getting to the location, to Vegas, let's say. So they asked them about their flight number, about the gate, about the airline, just to understand which people are landing when, which airline, all of these questions. And then what they did, they hired and operated a very special, specific limo service They just pick these people from the airport to the hotels, and then they also opened like sort of like an in-between lounge at the main hotels of the event to make people happy while they're waiting for their rooms in the hotels themselves. So they not only did the limo service, but also did the lounge. What happened then is the entire VP and C-level people out of this company, the entire executive team were actually driving the limos, sitting with the people in the limos, and making fun with them in the lounge. And they actually got dozens of meetings booked from this very, very unique, I have to say, approach, right? So this is just a very creative example of what you can do that's also costs less than building um, an entire booth. And I will give another example. So something that I did with a customer of mine. So what the company did is AI relationship builder, I would say something like that. So what they're doing is they would connect to a company's CRM, email, calendar, and they would try to help them find the best way to connect through their joint relationships to potential customers. So let's say, like, let's make it easy. Let's say that you work in a big company, you're targeting VP products, and then your VP product's best friend is a VP product that works in a company that you want to target. So their platform will tell you because of human interactions, because of LinkedIn, they call it career overlaps. So it's not only LinkedIn connections, but they also like have a smart algorithm about it. So what we did before the event, we actually attended SASTER together, which is a big event for revenue people. And then before the event, we actually made a list of 100 people that we must meet. And then we made in advance what we called a personal relationship cloud just for them. So obviously, we can't use the entire product. They need integration, Salesforce, whatever. But what we can do is tap into their friends on LinkedIn. So what we did, we created a relationship cloud for each one of them, where we connected to their LinkedIns and to their connections LinkedIns from their personal profiles. And then we build a cloud with 5 to 10 people that can introduce them to potential clients in the conference, and they know 100%. And then we sent them this relationship cloud one by one by one by one, and we told them, guys, these are people that you must meet in the conference, and this is how you approach them. Right? So this is what we did. We actually got dozens of meetings scheduled just from this play.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I've not heard it before, but I love it. It's so different. I suppose what I think here is then there seems like there's two tracks. Let's say I'm a revenue leader inside a scaling startup and I want to go and generate more opportunities and ultimately drive more revenue by generating some real quality relationships and opportunities for my sales team to go and have some brilliant interactions with my ICP. I've got two tracks. I can host my own event or I can go to other people's. Talk me through like how you think about those two options because obviously that you might do both, but what would mean that you would advise someone to do either one of those ahead of the other?
So I think the idea is always to mix them up. However, I do think they're right for different types of companies in different stages, and that's also very important. So when you know your ICP and you know who you should be targeting exactly, this is where you may want also to do your own events. So maybe to host executive dinners, obviously maybe with like partners and stuff, but like you want to do executive dinners, you want to build up your brand with top-notch executives from your industry. You want to make sure they have some good time, and then you want to obviously get some qualified leads and revenue from these executive gatherings, but you also want to learn and you want to build credibility and you want to create brand awareness, but specifically in your ICP, right? And this is where you want to also host some events. Um, Dinner's one option, but you could also host like a very interesting different type of event. For instance, I heard about an event, like side event organizer, that took 10 CISOs to watch Formula One, let's say. Now, obviously, this one could be relatively expensive. Again, depends on the country and all of that, but you can think of outside the box and you can organize your own events. So I would say hosting and organizing events is a very powerful tool. Obviously, you need to have someone inside the company that's in charge of that or has bandwidth to do it, because if you do it, you should do it very well, or you should outsource it completely to another company that will be able to do it for you. And never ever forget, you need to spend time and effort and have bandwidth to also do lead gen, because this part is crucial, right? If you organize an event and nobody is going to come or not relevant people are going to come, it's useless, right? So that's number one. Number two, I think leveraging events as a tool for doing go to market should be one of your top priorities from the moment you're funded. Okay, obviously also bootstraps and stuff, but like it's a bit more difficult with budget. But like once you take VC money and you start scaling, events is your first go-to-market tool. This is the only place in the world in which you'll be able to meet hundreds or thousands of potential customers in the same room and maybe get fraction of their attention, right? So events, large events, attending events, anytime, I would say, from once you have some budget to spend on that, and events and conferences should always be a part of your go-to-market motion. And then hosting executive dinners and executive events is one, when you know your ICP, and two, actually something that's also very important, when you know that you can get traction in a specific location. Because let's say you're based out of Israel, a lot of companies that I know, you want to get traction of, let's say, 20 VPs of product for dinner in the UK. It's quite difficult to do, I would say, if you do cold approach. You should maybe take a local rep or open up an office there and then do it, if you're planning on, of course, not just for that. Or what you should do is orchestrate the event in a city in which you already have presence. Maybe let's say that you have a New York office, you should do it there, right? Just as an example.
Hmm. Yeah, really interesting. A question I would have is around how do we target? So if we think about that end-to-end process of targeting the right people all the way through to how you see the end of that process looking, what's your advice there?
So I'll be very practical. So a month before an event, maybe 2 3 weeks, you should start building your attendee list. How do you do that? 5 6 methods. One, you scrape out the side events of the event. Luma events, for example, something that you can scrape out quite easily, and then you build an attendee list from that. Two is hashtags. Use LinkedIn and Twitter and Facebook hashtags, official event hashtags, and you scrape that out, right? Three is obviously lookalike. So you see which companies are sponsoring, and then you assume that relevant personas, obviously based on the typical attendee of the event, are going to attend. You make a list out of that. Another way of doing it is pulling out, obviously, the list of speakers. So you want to pull out the entire list of speakers. That's another way. Another way is, if you have an app, obviously, of the event, you want to scrape out, maybe take out leads from the app itself, and then build also an attendee list from that. And then maybe one last way is like minor communities. I will give an example. There is a big community around reInvent in Israel, let's say, and or Slack around reInvent, around the AWS community, stuff like that. And then sometimes like micro communities in different locations and cities would gather and open up before a specific event. So if I'm in the UK, I will maybe look for Slack channels or WhatsApp channels or something like that, or Facebook groups around specific conferences, right? So that's another idea. You build out your entire attendee list. You try to start doing it 2, 3, 4 weeks in advance. Step number 1. Step number 2, you think about the hook and the approach. So a few ideas for relevant hooks is 1, build a micro offering that you can leverage to attract people's attention, like I did in the personal relationship cloud. So obviously you can't sell your entire product just by sending it. But what you can do is kind of like strip down a lot of features, capabilities, build something small, unique to demonstrate value, and send it to people, or make sure that they are going to meet you by kind of like sending like something that would trigger their attention to look at the personalized experience that you've prepared for them. And you should also be um, hyper focused on the type of approach you do based on side events, let's say. So side events is a very is another very interesting hook that you can use. I've tried myself to create a LinkedIn campaign around Luma attendees that I found, and I created a personalized campaign telling people in email and LinkedIn that I can't wait to meet them there and do a shot or something like that, right? So this is very personal, very unique, and people love it. So first it's building the attendee list and then starting to do approach. So you build like a joint campaign that takes into account LinkedIn messaging, LinkedIn engagement, which is doing smart comments, and then emails, and then app itself if you have an app. And then you start creating a campaign that uses your hook and asks people to speak with you or meet with you at the event itself. What you also do is you create a list of 50 to 100 people that you should meet at the event no matter what, and you do a specific specialized approach just for them. You can leverage AI tools, or you can just do a manual approach on LinkedIn or email. So it works. And then in the events day, you print out a list with 50 faces or 20 faces with their name and title that you must meet at the conference. If you see one of them, you just like start talking to them. Let's say if you haven't managed to schedule a meeting in advance. What you could also do, which is like a small tweak, a small tip, is when you see them, when you spot them in the conference, you can just open up LinkedIn quite like quickly, find an interesting icebreaker in their experience, volunteering experience, something like that, something unique, something they care about, and then just start the conversation based on that and not the professional side, right? So yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
That's world class. That's like boom, 5 minutes of just pure gold. I do wonder if there's an icebreaker. So I think a lot of people might struggle with that first interaction, creating the moment with someone. What are some of your favorite tips around breaking the ice with people at events?
So it could be around if you're quite shy, I think the most the easiest thing to do is creating a rapport around situations. So one, let's say, is just standing in line next to someone. Like pick who you want to wait in line next to, right? So you can spot them and like stand next to them, and then you both are waiting for food together. You can just ask, "Oh, you saw the food, the drink looks very good." Two is speaking around the side event. You can start just a conversation asking, what's the best side event that you're thinking about attending? And this is a question everyone is usually constantly thinking about. Um, Three is starting conversations in the side event. People are more open to it. You can just toast with someone and then just ask where they're from. Easy, right? Like just start something like that. Another thing that is working very well for me is get to a talk a few minutes earlier, and then you can just spot in the crowd someone in your hit list, and then just sit next to them throughout the talk. And then after the talk, immediately you should start just asking them about their favorite part of the talk, as an example, right? Um, Yeah, I think that's mostly it. Creating rapport around situations. You can always do like the normal stuff, which is like if you see someone relevant just standing in a booth, just go to the booth, right? As an example, you can just ask for guidance to get to booth of company X or company Y, something like that.
Absolute masterclass. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing that. Would there be one piece of golden advice that you'd like to leave our listeners with if they were considering making events a core part of their strategy for 2026?
Sure. One very small practical tip is when you make an interesting interaction, always take a selfie with the person that you're speaking to. And then in your follow up, add the selfie. So, and also maybe two small things on follow up. One, when you talk to someone, immediately ask them to connect to you on LinkedIn and not you to them, because then you can just choose to connect and accept the invitation and you don't wait for
Yeah.
them to accept it.
Yeah.
And then immediately on the same day, just write something small about the interaction before your actual follow up. That should be anywhere in between 24 to 72 hours after the event ends.
Yeah. Genius. And I don't know if people know this, but there's that little option on LinkedIn where you can make your QR code pop up on your phone. And it's such a simple hack that I've not seen many people utilize. But if you can just bring up on the LinkedIn, there's a button that you can press and it'll show a QR code. They can scan it and just take them straight to your profile. And it's such a simple hack. Itai, can I drink the champagne of your advice and take a quick picture
Yeah,
for
of
LinkedIn?
course.
There you go. I'm going to put that on LinkedIn as our interesting moment and give some sizzle to people. If someone wanted to talk to you about potentially helping them with their event strategy, what's the best way for them to get hold of you?
You can just connect with me on LinkedIn, or I will write down the email, or you can send the email later
Yeah,
on.
I'll put it in the link. Yeah.
So yeah, email, LinkedIn, both work best.
Good man. Absolute pleasure. I knew it was going to be a great conversation, but you've blown me away with your advice. It's a real pleasure. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for hosting me.
Good man. Everyone else, we'll see you on the next episode. Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this conversation, we've got a newsletter called Growth Magnet on LinkedIn, where we take the best insights from all of these episodes and turn them into bite-sized format for you to enjoy.